it might be even intrinsically impossible ever to come up with a clear understanding of whether that P is true. So I may never know whether I'm informed that P. Exactly. So that's precisely the point. I mean, the if-then there works like a bridge. Now, if you give me that side of the river, which is you are informed that P, then I can build a bridge to the other side of the river which says P is true. You saying, someone may say, oh, but I never have that particular side of the river, and then I cannot build a bridge. But if you have that side of the river, the bridge will tell you where you get to. So you see, if the starting point is that you are informed that P, then our logic will say that necessarily P is true. We're not saying that there's a way of establishing once and forever that you have that piece of information. In fact, actually, one could try a different sort of perspective and say, well, look, if that's the case, then the only way I can make sure that I have a piece of information is to treat contents that are inevitably the way I think they are. In other words, maths, logic. But remember the other problem? The logical theorems, the logical truths are not informative. So here, it's a trade between what you gain and what you lose. If you gain total certainty, you lose informativeness. If you want to gain a lot of informativeness, you lose total certainty. And you can't normally get both. I mean, that's at least the idea. There were some people, Kant, who thought they could get both, the best of both worlds. You get the synthetic, the informative, but you get it a priori. That's a good trick, no? So you get it. No, basically you have your cake and you eat it at the same time. That's the whole Kantian project, the critique of pure reason. Basically, you have something that is informative, but is such a way that you have total certainty, because it's a priori is necessarily that way. That would sort of guarantee the sort of solution that we're looking for. Now, something that, yes, you are informed, and necessarily that is true, in a way that doesn't require either tautologies, things that are necessarily true, possible worlds, nor contingent truths, which could be otherwise. You see, Plato had that point again. I mean, he says, there's knowledge only of things that cannot be otherwise. But that's, again, maths. I mean, as he said, and it's acknowledged. But then we have the other difficulty. So the short answer is, logic doesn't tell you where you start. It tells you where you get to.
If you are giving the thought to other people, how do you interpret the implication sign in this?
In the standard truth table, normal, classic
material implication.
Standard, yeah. So truth table, if then, which is false only if, from truth you move and you get falsehood. Otherwise, it's fine. As I said, in the beginning, I'm really trying to provide a logical information which is as close to classic logic as possible. Not because that's the only way, but because at least that's a starting point. Then you can criticize it. It's like saying, no, I have my foot in this logic and then I can move elsewhere. I don't like it, I change this, I change that. At the moment, we don't have anything. So it's better to have at least some starting point and then eventually, even drop it if necessary.
Yeah, I enjoyed very much your paper from the formal point of view, and I have a few questions. I'll come back to your laboratory scientists. You have them play with the genes and the combined, and they play and they play and they play. And somewhere somebody will say, "Oh, this is a dog." This is. Implicit in your example is that your laboratory technicians can go out and see the real world and find out that this looks like that. But imagine the other metaphor, or what's the Gedanke experiments. You have this Amlu that has never seen the world, but he's very intelligent and he plays with the genes, and he builds and builds, and he always follows the rules. Never will he able to say, oh, this is a dog, this is a worm, or this is a beetle, or whatever. So implicit in example is that there's a window outside to see the real world to compare. Now, I have something like that going on. Constantly, I could see how you build out and see that B system is a possible structure for information logic. But somewhere, somehow, you have a window outside in the world, which you constantly call upon and saying, let's take the belief system. I say, well, can I, if I take A4, I have B of P, therefore P. And you start phenomenologically talking to me about, well, isn't this the way we think about? The implicit in your understanding of B as is a whole conceptual structure to which you have access either by your language or either by your own phenomenological experience. And all these systems are based on that outside system somewhere. And in French, it poses a problem. It's difficult in English to say, if you believe phi, therefore phi. But in French, if you believe in God, je crois en Dieu, Dieu existe. It's impossible. If you believe in God, God exists. But in English, the belief doesn't have the faith, the religious dimension. So you hear there you have two uses of the word belief that will build out a different system. So the question is, for me, is when you check out S5, T, and so on, you have a whole background of history, either Plato or Descartes or Kant, in saying, well, according to Plato, this is the type of system of belief systems I have. When I come back to your information logic, where's your outside window? What I have the impression is that you're using sometimes understructures of your third sense. You're saying that you gave at the beginning, you said I have sense meaning 1, meaning 2, and meaning 3. And the core concept there is to say, well, I'm holding. So my question is, what is holding information? In other words, what is the justification, like there is for the belief systems, like there are for desire systems, or there are for doxastic systems, which are historically grounded? Where is that information, or the concept of information itself based on? It seems to me that you're webbed in ordinary meanings of information. If I'm informed of that, therefore it's true. Suddenly you're changing the concept of information, always trying to match phenomenological experiences or linguistic experience to your B system. You follow my argument?
Sure, yeah. In fact, I take it as a... I don't take it as an objection, I take it as an advantage. In fact, I would be very happy if that were the case. Grounding a particular interpretation of a specific analysis of some concepts, like knowledge or belief or information, it has to start somewhere, of course. We have to share some initial common shared beliefs or some common shared experiences. Then we can obviously disagree. I mean, someone would say, no, my experience of what we mean by or how we use the concept such and such is different. Or one could say, look, the tradition, the historical tradition behind this particular analysis goes back to such and such authors who have argued. Now, in terms of going back to some particular historical tradition, well, if you put forward a new logic, that's impossible by definition. I mean, you're just trying to build something new, so obviously there's no way of going back to either Plato or Kant or Descartes. But I don't take that as a particular issue. What is interesting is that there are two things, seems to me, that are sort of constraining the analysis, guiding it. One, as you said, no, if we take away the historical tradition, which cannot play any role in this case, is some commonsensical, but belonging to that particular, say, frame of mind or culture or linguistic community. So sort of trying to, you spoke about a window, no, as if you were able to look at things from the right angle and say, yes, this matches, this doesn't match. Yes, this is a dog, this is not a dog, because I have a dog here, and this peculiar construction of mine does or does not resemble the dog in question. So there's that, and I'm going to come back to that particular issue. But there's also the other two logics in question. In other words, one can build on what has been done in doxastic logic and epistemic logic to see why people have taken those particular routes. Let's say about A4. Do we or do we not include truthfulness as a condition for a particular logic? Well, the reasons that have been put forward in defense of no for doxastic logic and yes for epistemic logic, well, again, we have to start somewhere. If those reasons were good in those contexts, we can simply build on top of those reasons, like on the shoulders of the past giants. So I would say that one criterion is consistency with previous criteria and constraints, and I think that satisfies, my presentation satisfies that particular criteria. The other thing is back to the window. Now, you have a dog, how do you know? Well, I don't. And in fact, I don't want to. And I don't think we need the dog to develop that particular construction and match the dog. What we do have is a conception of the item we're looking for, which doesn't have to be in the world, and it doesn't have to be realistic in any sense. It's just saying, look, I would like to build this particular system with those properties. Which formal system out there allows me to do this? I want to have something that, say, flies. I have several engineering products that I can choose. Does this fly? No. Does this fly? Yes. Well, this is going to be my choice. The model you started with, well, that is pretty much up to a philosophical discussion. And I would agree immediately that means it's going to be controversial and open to completely different views. The point is not so much whether the construction that I would like to be able to implement formally is the only construction, the only special system that I want to have. That's not the point. The point is, what would be the alternative? So, back now out of the metaphor. Suppose we want to talk about information and formalize it by means of one of these logics. The question is, if these logics are not working, so I can put forward a number of arguments in terms of a B-based system would do a good job. And one could say, well, but how do you know? I mean, how do you compare whether it does or it doesn't? What's your meter? And I say, well, the meter comes from a bit of tradition, but not much. What has been done in epistemic doxastic logic and contemporary problems. Gettier, epistemology, doxastic principle. I can solve several things, I can avoid several problems, and I can make sense of a number of issues in common sense, everyday experience. What do you think? If someone says, well, that's not enough, I would like to hear what the alternative is. Because if the alternative is no logic whatsoever, well, that's too disappointing. You see what I mean? I'm not saying that would be your point. I'm just saying, if what we are putting forward as a theory is not good enough, well, either it's not good enough for objections that can be moved to the theory, and then we have to have the objections, or we need to have a better alternative, which is another way of criticizing a previous theory. Lacking objections and better theory, we may as well stick to the least we can agree on. But I would like to, I agree with you that no need for a God's eye perspective or some kind of a special window on reality, such that you really have access to how things are in themselves, and therefore now you can sort of organize your system as matching or not matching. That's not the case. You have a particular system that you want to build, and then you find what the best tools to implement it. Whether that system, in the end, is how God will look at information, let's say, I have no idea.
The point is not to have God come in the debate.
No.
To understand I could see how internally the system will be justified by appeal to history and so on. It's always my
Your concern.
Yeah, my concern is that I build up a model according to these principles, which are so and so and historic and so on. Have a model. I would accept easily, say, well, this is the best model I have, and I use it as a hypothesis of what's outside. Mm-hmm. And you could come out and say, well, do you have other alternatives? My problem is that often you see more in your conclusions than that.
Sorry.
And saying, I have a model. I think it's a model of a dog outside. I've never seen it, but I think it's a good model of outside. And here you have a model of information, and I want to be sure that that is a theoretical step that is grounded. And what I found is that, in fact, you're going outside and saying, well, yes, I know what a unicellular is doing when it's processing information, and implicitly comes back in your model. Mm-hmm. That's where...
I agree. I mean, I think that...
The generalization in the conclusion, I could see that is related to other systems, but I'm still not sure that I can say that unicellular are processing information that way, unless you have a privileged access to unicellular organisms.
No, I think nobody could. So it's like an empty objection, because if one is saying, well, you never know, for example. I mean, I'm changing subjects, so I'm not saying that this is the objection. I'm saying compare this to the following objection. You don't know whether you're dreaming or not. I know. So can we move on? See, the point is, well, you never know whether your model really matches. What is that? I know. Can we move on? I mean, can we just do something that I can have some real sort of interaction with? For example, a good way of doing this would be to say, look, here is my computer system in the bank. It's working in such and such way. I have to make it work to share files. Which logic would do this job properly? And it's going to say, well, this is a concrete example, and it might be just part of my overall inclusive, self-consistent, let's say, dream. That maybe there's no such a bank. But within that sort of context, I'd like to test whether the theory works or not, or it doesn't. So, any internal way of assessing a particular model will have to assume that we're working, of course, with our means. I mean, I think I completely agree with you. If that's, I'm not sure whether that's the point, but if it is, I entirely share it with you that there's no way we can have a special window and sort of step out, look carefully, and get in again and say, yes, it does. Like the dog example. I can't build a dog here and then step out, check whether the dog is really looks like that, come back and say, yeah, that's a good dog. That's a good
my
dog.
point is I agree that we can't go out.
I agree.
When you're talking to me,
Mm-hmm.
you seem to be going out the window, and that's where I'm...
No, if that's the impression, I'm sorry that I gave it.
Because of the phenomenological explanations that come out.
Yeah.
Just like when you're talking about beliefs, you're giving examples, and then you say, I don't know how to go outside, but you're still going.
Because I just don't share that view that talking about reality as we experience it right now in this room is talking about something external. I mean, this is part of the whole information system. I include now what we're doing right now in this room as part of the infosphere. Just to come back to the, so it is just within there's no window outside. When I refer to as John believes that a train leaves at 10 o'clock, or Mary believes that people in Montreal speak French, I'm talking about a context which is entirely informational and is not opening any window outside. So if I gave that impression, which I might, it was my fault, but I didn't want to. I mean, I never meant to provide some finally, realistic outside perspective, which then can verify my model. No. I mean, it's model, as one of my colleagues was saying, it's model all the way up and all the way down. So it's always comparing a model to another model. I never have even the slightest doubt that the system I'm modeling is accessible outside some level of abstraction, just to put it more formally. And within that context, so I'm modeling John's behavior towards the train's timetable in a way which then, if I'm modeling my information, seems are compatible. So it's just a matter of consistency. But I'm really sorry if I gave the impression that
I don't want to excuse.
No.
It's a matter of methodology that I'm putting on the table.
But I hope, at least, I mean, if there's
disagreement, look outside.
No, but I don't want to. I mean, I'm fully Kantian in this. I mean, I don't think there's access to nominal reality in any possible sense, meaningful sense. So it would be ridiculous to call up some nominal reality and say, "Told you that was the dog," and then so like, just to.
Yeah, but between the metaphor looking outside. You could have a formal system that has all these properties and all these inferences and so on. Somewhere, somehow, you say, I'm always inside the systems. Never do I have to interpret that system according to my common life or to my ordinary world. I'm just playing with my symbols.
No, because life and common sense, they are other models. They're just models of models of models. I mean, I'm constantly, in a Kantian sense, working within a phenomenal context. So it's my phenomenon in the Kantian sense. I'm talking in the technical sense, not in any sort of Husserlian. No, the phenomenal approach to reality is such that the noumena stay behind, no matter. Now they constrain as they provide the background, but they never access directly. So when I'm comparing, say, this particular, put it in Wittgensteinian terms, this game, the linguistic game of knowing about a timetable, and this other linguistic game, which is information logic, I want the two games to be such that I like to see them interacting properly. If they don't, I adjust whatever I can adjust. Can I adjust the game about the timetable? No. Unfortunately, when all of us work within the game of knowing the timetable of trains, that's pretty much fixed. You miss the train if you don't. No reference to reality itself. I just know that's what happens. Can I adjust my logic? Yes. How do I adjust it? To make sure that it is compatible with the game of timetable for train, or with the game of the Earth is flat, or so there's a number of things that I want to make sure that constrain properly my extra game. Once I've done that, this is how sort of ambitious I want to be.
I see your own epistemic system.
Yeah, but of course, people can disagree on the whole overall picture.
Yes, just a question still about that A4 axioms. If you, for instance,
we call it up?
Well, the board.
Go ahead.
Yes, I'm just thinking about it in the context of practical rationality. I'm a firm believer of the importance of grounding theoretical rationality and practical rationality. So maybe we should always think of information as something that an agent can use for drawing inference, but also for acting or behaving. Mm-hmm. And if you tell me that there are beers in the fridge, and I look in the fridge and there's no beer, according to these axioms, you haven't given me any information because that was false. But the fact is that I justify my behavior by referring to that information that I have. So in some way, my behavior is caused by the fact that I'm informed that they're supposed to be
Yes.
in the fridge. So it's
You,
that
you,
information.
you've been told. You know,
Yeah.
you haven't been informed.
Yeah,
It's okay.
I've been told that there's just been. So we could say, in a sense, that would contradict that axiom, that the information, even if false, can cause behavior, which would be rational behavior, just this, by meaning that it is caused by beliefs or desires.
Of course. See, if a kid is scared by a ghost, he is scared, and he's truly scared, and he's scared to death. The ghost doesn't exist, does it? But he is scared. If you go to the fridge and pick up the whatever you think are beers, in fact you pick up something else and you didn't like it, you pick up some orange juice, you change your mind, and I told you, there's some beer in the fridge. There isn't. You go there, pick up some orange juice and you enjoy it. I didn't give you information. Just because you were successful in doing something on the basis of what I provided to you. But it's actually a whole debate, which is pretty, it's quite interesting, on what happens when people exchange what is actually called, this debate, content. I mean, beer in the fridge is content. When does that content qualify as information? Well, my and a few other guys, but I mean, I'm happy to put myself in the front line. My defense, which we could discuss, of the view that there's a difference between content and information, is that content is just meaningful data, well-structured, well-formed meaningful data. To move from well-formed meaningful data to information, you need an extra condition, which is the veridical nature of those well-formed meaningful data. That's how you move. No, that's some false information, namely some misinformation, namely some zero information, might be such that the agents using it are successful in what they're doing. That's not a problem. It's not a problem if we are careful about restricting all our discussion to one specific sense of this universe, which is information. Like, information can mean 1,000 things. I mean, one thing, for example, that it can mean are the round circles in the tree trunk. That's called information. My fingerprints is called information. There's a whole variety of things that are called information. A piece of music. Now, if I send it to you, you can say, oh, you sent me a piece of information. No, I didn't. I sent you a piece of music. Of course, we both right and both wrong. I mean, I was very careful in the talk to address the issue of information from a cognitive perspective, namely the same perspective that we share when we talk about knowledge and belief is something that we try to analyze in terms of what it tells us about the world. Now, of course, information is also a recipe. So there are, just to make it clear, I mean, the family of all possible ways of talking about information, they usually go under three main headings. Information that something, information about something, or information for something. Information that such and such is the case is the epistemic, doxastic, cognitive context. Information for something is the algorithmic recipe sort of idea. You give me instructions. Oh, shut the door. I got that piece of information and I go and shut the door. Is that true or false? It's not even meaningful to ask it. Or, there is information as something, like the rings, my fingerprints, the DNA. The DNA is not either true or false. It can be seen as instantiating rules for so the algorithmic general recipe idea, or in itself, just as the rings, the fingerprints, as presenting itself as a piece of information. I mean, I didn't speak about the other senses. All I had in mind was the cognitive sense. For the cognitive sense, false information can be perfectly successful when an agent receives that piece of information, insofar as that is content which can trigger actions. But if your aim is to catch the train at 10 o'clock and I tell you that the train leaves at 11, you're going to miss it. That's as simple as it gets.
In that sense, often you see, at least in the school books, the difference between data, structured data, and information. Information is not structured data, but it's meaningful. So you could receive, the Canada system for weather receives every day data many are true because they're causally linked to their source. But among all the propositions that are true, only some are meaningful in the sense that they're actions that can be given. In that sense, information brings in more than just truthfulness. It brings in something for action or something other. Another decision comes afterwards. And
no, I mean,
that's a
no.
theory of the concept of, it's a theory about the concept of information. I'm with you on that point, but what you're saying is I think, if I interpret correctly, what you're saying, your responses up to now is that you were interested in the syntactic representation of what can be the rules about verifying if information is true or not. It's the logic, the logic rules permitting to talk about information in a way that we don't need to refer to any kind of mundane events to verify its truthfulness. Is that it?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But what I was trying to say was that when we talk about data and we talk about them as either randomly or well structured, not well formed, structured or organized, some syntactical level, and then we talk about the meaningfulness of those data. Well, these are all conditions that work towards transforming those data into information. I'm not saying that information is data veridical, or true data, full stop. I'm saying, no, you move from data, well-structured data, so syntax, interpreted, so semantics, and you need something else. That's my point. I mean, I'm not saying that therefore I'm right. I'm saying what I do in it is a different paper, which came out in fact last year or this year, I can't remember, entitled "Is Information a Meaningful Data?" And the answer is no, not yet. It doesn't mean that it isn't. It is not yet. Information is meaningful data that are also truthful. That's my point. Now, I don't try to convince people just by stating it. I'm just saying that's the thesis.
Okay. Would you say that if you have this unicell or brain in the watt, you could imagine a situation where there are stimulus coming in the organization, I would say the brain in the watt or the brain, whatever, or the unicellular thing, is informed because his captors bring in something, but they're not through. But I could still say, yes, it's informed. This brain in the watt is informed that the temperature outside is 25 degrees, but it's just because inside the structure, the output of the combinations of his capture give them this information, but the information itself is not causally related to the outside. It's the illusion, and so on. In other words, there are illusion situations of which I would tend to say that this organism is informed, but me from outside, I know that it's not true. Would that still be information?
I see what I mean. See, that's the problem of someone outside. The very last thing you said, me outside. Say I pick up someone's brain and I make some stimuli, and on the brain some neuroscientific, not even too fancy thing, and I give some stimuli to that brain, so that the person in question feels that it's very warm. As a matter of fact, the temperature of the room is pretty cold, but through this stimuli, I'm making the person feel warm in that particular room. Imagine. Would that brain or the person who owns that brain be informed? My uneasiness there is with the very sort of setup of the say, mental experiment on the whole. Because the mental experiment assumes that there's someone outside able to match the temperature of the room as far as we know it, and the temperature of the room as far as the brain stimulated acknowledges. And of course, for us, it becomes a decision about what counts as the real state of the room. And we assume, by means of this mental experiment, that the real state of the room is, let's say, 10 degrees. But so we stimulate the brain to feel 25 degrees. So in that case, I would say, no, it's not informed.
Or would you put it down? Because the difficulty we seem to have is that from the brain away, he sees something. We say, we will say he's informed if what he receives is true. That's what I understand. But when you're talking, what I understand now is that I would say that this organism is informed if he believes that it's true, which is different.
No.
Or the brain.
Well, see, as far as the brain is concerned, there's no. See, we are mixing up two contexts here. I mean, we need to be careful. We need to keep them separate. Otherwise, it gets too confusing. If we're talking about from the perspective of the brain, of course. Now, if let's say the brain in a bat thinks or acknowledges that the temperature of the room is 25 degrees, and anything that brain can test tells it that it's 25 degrees. As far as that brain is concerned,
according to his captors.
Yeah, according to all the input.
Yes. He never knows if it's outside.
No, he never knows. As far as that brain is concerned, yes. No, that brain is. No, as far as he knows, that particular brain, as far as it's concerned, that's a piece of information. But we are introducing a different context, which is us assessing what the brain does. And for us, because we have a different way of assessing the temperature of the room, that brain doesn't have the information about the temperature of the room. But these two contexts have to be kept separate. We can't sort of shift from one to the other constantly.
I agree that we must not separate, but you seem not to be able to talk about that brain from outside without saying that he's concerned, or he knows that, or he believes that.
I'm just saying that
the brain is not even having information; it's just reacting causally.
And I mean, the brain is reacting causally to a reality which is, as far as we are concerned, fictional. For example, it's going to die. It is 10 degrees, it's not coming up, and it's just too cold for the brain to survive. Let's say, something simple. So, you see, I don't want to be too sort of empirical in this, but there's a reality check towards the end. And if the brain thinks that it's eating a lot, and plenty of water and so on, and we know that we're not feeding anything to that brain, we're just feeding inputs that make it have the internal inputs, let's say, if we don't want to use any belief information, well, the data that the brain receives are plenty of food, plenty of water. So the brain is happy. The data we have from outside, we're not feeding the brain. Well, sooner or later that brain is going to die. Now, who had the information?
You see, the difficulty for me is that let's say we're not there. All I could say is that the vector that's input changes the vector of this by a factor of such and so on. And I can compare the vector of the brain to the vector of the input and say, well, the transformation of this. And that's all there is.
Yeah.
And it's causally related. Even causally is metaphysics. I have such a data and the other, and that's all I could say. But now you're explaining me what's going on, and you're translating your vectors into more phenomenological words and saying, the vector AE that is there is data that is not really causally related there, and the vector that is there is the result, and suddenly you come in and you talk about concern and beliefs. And the difficulty is, can you really talk about these things without using the outside view?
The answer is, of course not. And first of all, I was using your example. You said that we were there checking the brain. If we're not there, I'm happy to follow, but you shifting the problem. You shifting the problem? Okay, let's change it. Rephrase the problem. We're no longer there. You said we were, but I'm happy to say it. Okay, we're just all brains in a vat, fed with input that make a difference on our systems that react causally to those inputs. This we call data, let's say. That would be okay. Those data get transformed by these sort of systems into something that is syntactically organized and meaningful somehow. So they make a difference, let's say. Just forget about semantics. Just make a difference to the brain.
So vector's bigger.
They change.
The door opens.
No, they change state. They make some transition state in the system, which is causally related to the input. If the question is, are we facing a case of information or not? What is your answer? My answer can only be that it depends on whether these transition states caused by the data have the sort of causal relationship with the environment that those systems involved would qualify as true or veridical or, say, reliable from a alethic perspective. I mean, the vocabulary may change, but the same thing is the same. If those brains have no way of checking whether these things are causally properly related, causally just is not enough, no? Now it has to be causally properly related to the outside system, to the environment, sorry. The question becomes sort of empty. I mean, it's no longer answerable because it's just not possible to understand what would look like an answer. It's like, we're back to the idea, suppose we're all dreaming. And I say, no, look, I'm informed that this bottle is on the table. If I'm dreaming and I'm saying, no, this bottle is on the table, is this information or not? I just don't have any answer for that sort of question. Because I don't understand it. I mean, just don't understand what game are we talking about. I like to be able to play a game where I can win. See, if it is a game where there's a lose-lose situation, I'm happy to admit that I'm going to lose, because if mutatis mutandis, in a changing metaphor, if the game is head you win, tail I lose, and the dreaming argument, the brain in a vat argument, fundamental skepticism, they're all of that sort. They're all like head I win, tail you lose. There's no way out. Different is if we assume that within some frame, anything, I'm happy to have any frame, we are comparing, so there's a frame, we're comparing two models.
Yeah, I see.
That's my difficulty here. So like the beer business.
So would it be possible just to, I don't know, for another formal system, just to drop that axiom? Could somebody just drop that axiom and accept A4? Just accept all the others, and I mean, would it be just possible to build another information logics?
Yeah, that's what we saw here. When you drop either A8 or A4, you get a different.
If we drop A4, we get.
If you drop A4, you get this kind of DB, which is nobody has worked much on DB, so as far as I know, it's a weird combination between doxastic and what I would call informational logic. Here, all you have is consistency, building on top of other things. Namely, you never believe at that stage. All these logics implement consistency rules, which says that if you believe that P, you do not believe that not P. So either, which again, I mean, you see, it's controversial because that doesn't apply. It's at the same time controversial but interesting. It's not trivial. So, for example, that doesn't apply to all cognitive states. Your memories. Now, people are perfectly happy to concede that you may remember both P and not P, and not be sure whether your memory plays any trick. You may remember you put the keys on the table, and still remember that you left them in the car. But how these two memories come together? Whereas believing, again, I mean, I don't think it's worth entering into the discussion, but there's a large agreement in the epistemological community on the point that believing works differently. Works like either you believe that P or you believe that not P, but you do not have beliefs that P and not P at the same time. The point can be rephrased more normatively, saying you shouldn't, at least. Whereas with memory, there's not even a normative point. nobody says, no, if you remember that P, you shouldn't remember that not P. No, I mean, people are perfectly happy to, for example, in terms of holding, what does that mean? Well, just having it in the database. No, you register that particular P in the memory of the agent, database, the brain, and you register also not P. Of course, that's going to be messy, but it's not that it is not possible. Whereas in terms of doxastic logic, and then even more in terms of epistemic logic, the argument goes, and I must say, I mean, for once, there's plenty of agreement on all this, that that's not an issue. I mean, in other words, you guarantee consistency at the belief level, and you guarantee veridicality at the epistemic level. So the minimum, the least that we can do for an information logic is to guarantee consistency, and therefore build it in terms of A4. Following again, also the general discussion on these things that has found some general agreement. As you know, I would push things a bit higher, but that's a different issue.
That whole enterprise is based on the idea that logic.
Hey, but can you speak higher? So I'm half deaf, so.
Yeah, this whole enterprise is based on the idea of logic as based on axiomatic system. But do you think it could be improved by being conceptualized as say an intuitionistic or constructive logics, a system of logics where there's no axioms but just rules of inference, and then
we're going down the wrong way. I mean, it's not that there are no axioms; they're just different axioms.
Yeah, well, but you don't have safe for
They have to be constructed.
Axioms. Constructing axioms, right? No, you just change axioms for a different kind of axioms. Yeah.
So you can draw safe for.
Sure. Yeah. I see. I quite agree on the possibility. Whether that is going to be the next step, I'm not sure. But I mean, this is not a rhetorical point. I honestly believe that yes, in fact, it might be worth investigating whether some of the things that one does classically could be done, in fact, more constructively. For example, not dropping bivalence or tenors of proof theory, dropping proofs by contradiction, and whether that makes things better, easier, more applicable. My honest answer is that I don't know. I mean, I would be already very happy if we could build that as a criticism of what has already been done. It's like building a wall. We try to do this first with classical means, and then show that actually can be done better or differently by non-classical means. It's an open question.
Because it could be relevant for information logic to be constructive or computable, because if it would avoid say better case where you have to rely from, if you're informed that you're informed that A or not A or not A, or all that unbounded rationality. Well, if you start with say substructural logic, or what is there's some new one called computability logic, where being true mean you can compute or construct the object.
You have linear logic, that's one thing that I've been looking at. You could have some linear logic, so resources are not re-employable. I mean, you see, it's much easier to think what the alternative could be once you have the first specimen. So you think, this may be, and I'm perfectly honestly happy to acknowledge that it may not work. But then it's so much easier to say it doesn't work because 1 and 2, here is how I fix it, rather than starting from scratch. So we have a first step, first go. It could be a draft, and then you can redraft it, as it were, by using different logics. Is that a good ending?
So, first disclaimer, I'm not a philosopher, so I'll ask very naive questions. The first one is just an observation. The fact that I find it interesting that I'm more likely to inform Jean if I tell him that he has or doesn't have money in his bank account than if I tell him he has money in his bank account. So in one way, I'm sure to inform him something. because it's true, he has or he doesn't have money. And the second case, well, I don't really know, so maybe I will inform him, or maybe I don't. So this is a bit interesting. The other question comment is, so you justify one of your side effects by saying, well, that's what AI people do. That is, if we just go through, so if something is false, then we know it's false, and then you justify this by saying that's what AI people do. I'm not an AI person, but I'm not sure I buy this. That is, not all AI systems make the closed world assumption. That is, if I don't know something is true, then it's false. Actually, it seems that a lot of AI people, they start with the things they know to be true, but they don't necessarily conclude that if I cannot determine that something is true, then it is false. So you could not necessarily go through the database and say, well, I don't know this to be true, therefore it's false. From a practical point of view, I don't think that's what necessarily all AI researchers do. So
no, in fact, I never claimed that. That's a very different statement. I put it back on the wall. What we're saying there is that if something is false, then the system has that piece of information, namely that it cannot have that piece of information. If the Earth is flat, that's false. All we're saying with that particular B axiom is that, and I said, it's a pretty high demand on the system, but we're saying that the system has the information that it will never have that Earth is flat as a piece of information in its database. So it's super consistency. Something like a requirement of never introducing, having the information of never introducing into your database a piece of falsehood, which is not like knowing that something is false.
Okay.
Is that an answer to your question? Yeah. About the previous point, tautologies, like you have or you don't have money in your bank account. Well, I may just add as a comment that there's a difficulty in the literature on, say, generally speaking, analysis of information from an epistemological point of view, because of this relationship with with probability. The more probable something is, the less informative. The more unlikely or the more improbable something is, the more informative. Now, if you put this along the line, you say more and more likely, more and more probable. So there are 10 people in the room. There are some people in the room. The second one, it's more likely than the previous one. There are only 10 people. There are some people. Yeah. So the higher the probability of the statement, the less informative, because there are some people is assumed, and again I'm talking about stuff that is commonly shared by researchers. It's assumed to be less informative than there are exactly 10 people. Well, you see, if you keep going, then the more inclusive your statement becomes, the less informative, until you reach the point of something that is so inclusive that is good for any possible situation. Maybe there aren't any people. Okay, well, good, thank you. Is there anyone in the room? Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. Is that a way of answering my question? Of course not. In a way, so going back.
But you've been informed, though.
Well, there you are. Have I been? According to what sense of being informed?
Right.
We're back to I've received some meaningful words. Does that meaningful piece of English provide information to me? Well, we've been working on something that is epistemically worth it. To be epistemically worth it means that by having that piece of information, for example, I can behave differently. I can act differently towards reality, let's say. If you tell me you don't have any money in the bank, gosh, maybe the bill, or this is just illustrative, naive examples to make the point. if you tell me either you have money in your bank or you don't have money in your bank, how is my, for example, behavior going to change? How can I take that as a piece of information that can affect my behavior? I am as well informed as I was before. I could have reached that conclusion without asking you. I didn't have to check my bank account to know that either I do or I don't have money in my bank account. But just to complete this point, try to go down. There's something else that you may find unpleasant, which is the less likely something becomes, the more informative. Unfortunately, the most unlikely thing is something that not only is false in one possible world, in two, in three, but it's false in all possible worlds. So you reach the conclusion that the most informative statement I can ever provide you with is a contradiction, which is very unpleasant. I mean, that doesn't really match our, let's say, commonsensical impressions. Hence, you have this, within these two barriers, you have a whole spectrum of more or less informative statements. The less informative, the closer you get to a tautology, the more informative, the closer you get to a contradiction, but you don't really want to reach a contradiction. So, sorry, piece of advertisement, but some time ago, a couple of years ago, I wrote a paper trying to solve this, which is
which I read, by the way.
That one, which about this paradox, the Bar-Hillel-Kanner paradox, just to use a label, trying to detach how close a statement gets to a situation and its truth values. Again, I mean, you read it, so maybe you like, maybe you don't. I mean, maybe there's plenty of stuff to discuss for the rest of the afternoon and evening. I don't think we have that much time, but that's basically my line of approach.
Just a point. It's related to that, the Dresky definition of information, where the probability has to be 1.
All right.
That would mean you're informed of something when the probability is 1. But on the other sense, the probability lowest is the Shannon information concept, so that you're kind of switching the definition of information. I'm informed if something has a probability 1, which in fact is different from what...
True, no, that's a different thing. That's a different thing. For something, because that means that that's the case. So we're not talking about being informed that the statement P is true, which is Dresky's position. I mean, Dresky, for example, he's one of the people who supports strongly a veridical interpretation of information. But it's different from how probable a statement is and how probable the statement that it is true P is. Of course, I want to get 1 in the first case, especially if I have a veridical interpretation of information. So, I agree with you. That's a different matter.
Well,
call it a day?
Yeah, it's 3 hours.
Thank you, thanks a lot. But philosophers, I know that philosophers never agree, so the important thing is whether it is fruitful to discuss. But it's interesting to discuss rather than...
Thank you very much.
But no, thanks to you. It's lovely afternoon.
Very much.
Thank you.
we'll have a beer and dinner.
You go ahead.
I think the full concept of information is based on sensation.